Welcome to this episode of the 94twenty podcast, where we talk about the music that we love and the industry that we tolerate.
And I can say without a doubt, moments just like this define what life's about. In the incandescence in your eyes, dance with the fire in these lights. I can't admit that I'm just a witness of proof of the highest love. And I hopelessly try to explain all the things you never say. Every time you look at me, my world is ending inside. I'm only suspending in time. The universe inside your eyes, colliding right into mine. All these emotions I hope to set into motion tonight. And I can see a future in my dreams. The moon and stars don't shine at night the way you do for me. From the sound you make with the breath you take, all the good that radiates from you without even trying. You're someone I'm dying to know. And I hopelessly try to explain all the things you never say. Every time you look at me, my world is ending inside. I'm only suspending inside. The universe inside your eyes, colliding right into mine. All these emotions I hope to set into motion tonight. All the things you never say. Every time you look at me, my world is ending inside. I'm only suspending inside. The universe inside your eyes, colliding right into mine. All these emotions I set into motion tonight.
Hey everyone, welcome to this episode of the 94twenty podcast that was witnessed by our featured band of the week, YEARLOVE. Hi, Carl and Greg. How are you guys doing today?
Hi, Nicole and Greg.
Hey, Carl.
Well, we
Hey,
wanted
Greg.
to start on a little bit of a somber note tonight, Greg, don't we? Just to
Well,
there was a couple things
I
that
don't.
happened.
I guess it's kind of somber. I'm certainly grieving the loss of a friend. His name was Brenton Roberts, and then subsequently, several years later, it's one of the few times it's happened in my life where I'm friends with someone, I work with someone, and they inform me they've undergone a name change. Evidently, the story, as I heard it, was that Brenton, who was always a very forward-thinking, very spiritual, very kind of a seeking, mindful person, I think went through some kind of a spiritual conversion that had to do with some Aboriginal stuff. Brenton was a native of Australia, and he was bestowed the name Washantara. In the 90s, he created a very unique, very interesting kind of group therapy type session for men in Australia. I think he actually created it or co-founded it in Nashville, but it was called Circle of Men. And I know that Australian men of a certain age, I guess, are considered to be fairly stoic, and they really didn't have a lot of resources available to them as far as mental health was concerned. So I know that this Circle of Men thing caught on, and it was really considered to be very valuable work for the elderly in Australia. Brenton was a wonderful guy. I signed him as a songwriter to the performing rights organization that I worked for. And we tried years and years and years to actually promote his work as a songwriter and get him some outside cuts. That didn't work out, and I was always kind of disappointed because he was such an incredible guy that I wanted the world to know him. I wanted him to have a certain amount of entertainment industry success as far as songwriting was concerned, so that more people could get to know him and experience him. He was a real character and a really great guy. If you're interested in his music, go to Washantara, WASHUNTARA.com.
We'll put the link up on the.
We'll
we
put the show notes.
We can put the link up, and some of his music is up there. He was just the kind of guy that music just flowed from him, poetry flowed from him. He was the kind of guy that just happened to him
The
on a daily
antithesis
basis.
of me.
Yeah, he's basically the antithesis of Carl. That's correct. So,
Artist, right? Artist and being supported by other artists, and
It's kind of our theme this week.
that's
Yeah.
our theme.
yeah.
Is it
If we're
theme
lucky-
or topic?
I mean, I guess it's a topic, not necessarily a theme, but
If we're lucky, we'll get, in support of all that we try to do, we'll get a Carl's Rule.
I don't know, but as far as being supported, the question. The question of the week. This week, and we have a few people who answered it. The question was, as an artist, do you feel supported in your career? And if so, how and by who? I never felt like I had that support as an artist, I never had that mentor, never had that person that really kind of, I thought, really believed in me in any kind of. Well, you did, Greg. You were one
but
person.
there's only so much I could do, right? I mean,
Right.
you need that person. You need that person stationed in several places and in several time frames throughout your career. You need
Like what it is, I love biographies. And one thing I did as a young kid, I always read biographies of musicians, like from Frank Sinatra to Elvis, to the Beatles, to Bowie, to Springsteen, to Billy Joel. I've read a million biographies, The Who, The Doors, And one thing all these acts had in common, I read, they always had one guy in their corner who was supporting them and pushing them, There's a great story about U2. Paul Guinness was their manager in Dublin. He was a little bit older, and he really believed in these guys. And he said, he mortgaged his house, took a second mortgage on his house to bring them to America. And supposedly his wife said to him, like, Paul, what are you doing? I know you like these kids, but this is our home. You're taking a risk here with our home. And he goes, no, man, I got to do it. These kids are going to do it. And I guess she's happy he did do it because they became U2, and now he's worth $500 million. But that's the kind of belief, that artists need. Like we talked about this last week, I think. It's total self-doubt. Because you never know if you're doing anything that's worthwhile. You never know, is that any good? Is this stupid? Do I really sound good? Who wants to hear this? I'm sorry, so many artists I know, that's how they feel.
And to kind of talk a little, because I am not an artist, so I cannot, from my point of view, be like, oh yeah, everyone needs to be supported. But I was talking to Koya today, actually, because he's just an awesome person. And he even said that as an artist, he feels like he hasn't found the team around him to support him and get him to the place where he wants to go.
The one champion.
The one champion. And that's what he feels like he is missing out on right now. And what he's searching for in order to make sure that he can get to that next step.
And
in
we're
his
not talking
career.
about money. I'm not
No,
talking
no,
about
no.
financial support
No,
at all.
no,
We're talking
it's a
about just,
person.
I love my mother dearly. She was wonderful, but she used to say to me things like, yeah, Carl, but you're not really a singer. Yeah, you play the guitar kind of nice, but and then I would say funny things like, well, what about Elton John? Or he wasn't a singer. But he sings his material. He goes, yeah, Carl, but he's famous. I said,
Right.
well, but he
And-
wasn't famous until he became famous.
And you bring up a good point, because as a music artist, I feel like that's something that it, like, for people and parents and whatnot, it's like a nice hobby growing up. But unless like you truly have someone like Taylor Swift's mom or whatnot that really supports you and like takes you to that next level, it can almost be a disappointment when parents hear from their children like, oh, they're going to pursue something that I don't 100% believe in. And that can be super self-doubting and super disheartening for someone who really just wants to be supported and see success in something that they're very passionate about and potentially also talented with.
How my career kind of started. So through high school, I'm in band through high school, love it. Senior year of high school, freshman year of college, you're old enough to play bars, so we started playing bars. For a while, we played the copy band stuff and made money. But then I said, I don't really play in Zeppelin when I'm 50 or David Bowie. I want to play my own stuff. I want to write songs. So I started writing songs. No one wants to hear it. No one wants you in their band because, Carl, no one wants to hear those songs. I said, yeah, but this is what I want to do. So you have to find a new kind of people. And then also a lot of my friends from high school and college who were like into this, it fell away and they got real jobs and they went to like law school or whatever. I got even deeper into it. Now I'm like 19, 20 and everyone else is like, quitting their hobby of it. But I'm like, no, this is what I want to do. This is it. So I started going into the city and then you got to find a whole new group of friends, who are into it now at that age, so I don't know if it's like that now.
That's really kind of a defining moment, though. The idea that, it may have occurred to you or you may have thought that it was happening gradually, but in actuality, it takes, a few years to do this or that or the other, or, 6 years to move up the corporate ladder after you've gotten your bachelor's degree, whatever the case may be. But it was really kind of a defining moment for you to say, no, I'm doubling down on this. I'm actually going to do this.
And it's funny too, now that it's bringing up all these memories. So when you're writing songs, and I love having the TV on without sound, like to have the visual of something to look at. So I'd basically be sitting in my room with the TV on, just holding the guitar with a pad next to me, basically doodling around, doing nothing. So when my mother would look in, she goes, "What are you doing?" I said, I'm working." It looks like you're doing nothing. You watch your TV to sit there with, she couldn't figure, she didn't see what I was doing. Like I would spend hours, I don't know if you know this, Greg. It sometimes can take 3 hours to get that next line that's right. And then it comes out and you go, yeah. And you think you did something. You have a beer and you wrote like 2 sentences. But that's how it was for me. And unless you're a songwriter or an artist, no one gets that.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if, part of this question, the interesting part to me is that, particularly in Nashville, with all the co-writing that goes on, it kind of feels like a team sport, And I think that a lot of writers and a lot of artists, for that matter, would identify with having other artists being super supportive and other songwriters being super supportive. I never really saw much of that. I mean, that might be something that that's intimate and you have to experience it if you're co-writing or if you are,
that's what
label mates with someone.
That's
right.
what bands are for. The bands are great that way because you sit in a room with 4 of the musicians and you have the same goal. And that was kind of cool. I still love that.
And you felt supported, right?
Well, yeah, because you'd I don't know, you do the one line, yeah, that's good. Then the bass player will do this. He goes, right, that's good. Let's go there. What about this? And then you build this thing and it becomes something. And that was kind of good support.
I like that. They, for many years, the executives in Nashville, the little thing that got talked about by the water coolers was the idea that what country music needed was they needed a Fleetwood Mac, right? And
I don't know what that means, but
they basically wanted an act that could be like Fleetwood Mac and sell, a zillion records and have all this interplay between the members, but have it be country. And it was like they discovered pretty quickly over the course of a few years that that's very, very difficult
Oh,
to
Fleetwood Mac.
create.
Yeah, that's a whole different thing. That was just
Yeah,
a
and,
fluke,
and
too.
I think the other thing is that it was very difficult to like put together from a corporate perspective because people would have to sign on to sleeping with one another, and
Yeah, but that's when it gets ruined.
Yeah,
Whenever the people with money, hey, I have an idea. Let's do this. Then you know it's going to be messed up. You know, as far back as I know from the '60s, after the Beatles, if you played the guitar and you lived in England, you got a record deal. You know, and in the '90s, if you were in a grunge band, no matter how bad you were, after Nirvana, you got a record
and you own,
deal.
yeah, you owned a flannel
and the
shirt.
Same, and the same
right,
thing
right.
with, so it all over. And that's what they do. They just follow the leader. If you were a folk singer in '61 and, playing the Village in New York, you got a deal. What the hell? Because that's what they do. They don't know what they're doing. They have no idea. And then they ruin it.
I'm actually glad. I was thinking about it today. I'm actually glad that a lot of the trappings of the music industry that we've had to deal with and circumnavigate for the last 20 years or 30 years, a lot of that stuff has gone away. It literally doesn't exist anymore. I mean, the idea that you're going to sell 1 million records next year if you just get into the studio and you just make the perfect record and you find $50,000 to throw at radio to get your single on the radio. The idea that you're going to approach the industry that way, that absolutely does not exist anymore.
So I went on Clubhouse last night just to hear a couple of things, and I'm listening, and basically it was just a bunch of like people with credentials, supposedly you read their bio, they have jobs at places that we've heard of, but they're just pontificating idiots. I'm sorry,
and they weren't even giving,
and they weren't even giving any information. They're basically boasting their own. What I was her. Like,
and
they
were boasting and talking in circles, and also talking out of their butts,
right?
Because they weren't even giving information on like who they worked with or like what they were actually able to do. It was just, is there a rule coming?
No more labels. End labels.
I love the fact that I bring out the rules in Carl.
They're ridiculous. You look at the music industry since like the 50s, and I'm surprised any records got made. Anybody good ever came out. They're in the way. They're like bad high school teachers.
Yeah, but they're the ones with the portfolio, Rolodex that people tend, and the money that people tend to like.
And then it's funny too. There's so many of these guys that were these big A&R execs back in the 80s and 90s when I was doing it. And now they're all these losers with these websites and consultancies. And they can't get themselves arrested.
They were in the chair, so to speak. Right.
But now, like, they can't even get arrested. Now you can probably get them to, like, walk your dog if you want,
Well, and I guess it kind of brings it back to our topic this week of feeling supported. But like with labels, when you're making money for them, you probably feel supported, but when you're not, you get dropped or you get put on the back burner. So
there was this great guy who I worked with years and years ago, one of the best guys I ever met. His name was Doug Thaler. He worked for Doc McGee. He signed AC/DC. He was actually in the Motley Crue movie, that somebody played him. He had something to do with them. But he told me a long time ago, listen, man, if someone wants to sign you, there's two ways they'll sign you. There's the guy who's going to think he can sell you and the guy who believes in you. He goes, no matter what the deal is, I don't care how much better the guy who thinks he can sell you the deal is, always go with the guy who believes in you, because that's the one that's going to go the extra mile. Because inevitably when it goes south or doesn't really work out the way and you're not making the money like you were saying, they're going to drop you. They don't care. There's no loyalty in this business. You're only as good as your last record or your last movie or your last. So
the ability to actually make money, for most folks has been kind of extracted from the equation. So we have to discover why it is we're continuing to do it. Why do people continue to, go to a music center and buy a $1,500 guitar? I mean, why do people take drum lessons? Why do people watch the voice? We've already established on this podcast, one of the things I'm most proud of is we've already established the idea that there are no more rock stars. We're done.
But they don't believe that anymore. They don't believe that.
We know that. we're trying to educate people on that.
But there's always going to be the next, I don't know.
I just wanted to bring this up. I've seen 3 articles this week about bringing back the CD.
Really?
And I wanted to get your opinion of that. Yeah.
I think that's great if you could find a CD player. I mean,
Well,
that's
for
the
what?
issue.
It's kind of intriguing to me. I'm sorry. I mean, I realize
if you're going to bring
that-
something back, bring back the vinyl then. It's
well,
cool.
I mean, vinyl came back to some degree, but it's $30 for an album.
I think bring back the 8-track. Bring back the 8-track.
I think vinyl's a better investment than a CD, because at least people have to go out and buy one thing and then the vinyl's for it. The CD,
I don't know if it's just magical thinking. I don't know if it's
I think you're just
me
making it up. I didn't read that at
wishing
all.
things were the way they used to be. But I just think the idea that an artist could actually control the selling of a physical piece of product that they had margin in, I just think it would be incredible if it could come back. Right.
You know what? Let's push that. You know what? Let's push the cassette and the Walkman. Let's bring that back. So we got 3 people. Our question was the question of the week. As an artist, do you feel supported in your career? And if so, how and by who? So we had 3 people answer. Are they all artists?
They're all artists. Yep.
So let's start with Andrew Beam. See what Andrew had to say, okay? This is Andrew.
Hey, y'all. This is Andrew Beam. It's been a tough year for everybody in the music industry, but I feel so much support in the midst of it, especially from our fans who really become family, whether it's on streaming platforms, social media shout-outs, or just even around town. I think everybody's ready for shows to come back. Also have to give a huge shout-out to our sponsors for the support every day, from Budweiser, Local Boy Outfitters, AOPI Prosthetics, Charleston Concrete, Pullman at 4x4, and Rigged Up Motorsports. Looking forward to a great 2021.
He's taking it more from financially support.
I could see from the financial support, but he at least included the fans, which don't necessarily have to support him financially. They just maybe follow him on social media. But
so do I detect a little NASCAR vibe there? Because he mentioned 2 things. One, fans as family, and then he mentioned some motorsports. So he might be doing absolutely the right thing.
The next guy, Stephen Cade.
Mm-hmm.
Do we know Stephen?
Yes, I know Stephen. He just released his latest single, Pinky Promise. And I found it just scrolling one day because it's a picture of him and his daughter. And it was intriguing to me. So I listened to it, and it's got like a Brad Paisley vibe to it.
Let's hear what Stephen had to say.
Hey, 94twenty. I certainly do feel supported in my career by, number one, Jesus Christ, my Lord and Savior, and also my lovely wife and family. This is Stephen Cade.
Short and sweet.
More concise, and more closer to what I was going for.
Yeah.
More like, less financial, but more like the emotional support of being an artist.
He also brings in the faith aspect too. So
yeah, but what I'm saying, but more like that emotional support, because like I said, being an artist, in my opinion, is basically you're just totally full of doubt. So, when in doubt, you need that emotional support. Well, I guess if Budweiser is giving you $1 million, who cares how much self-doubt you got? You're doing okay. But we have one more answer from a guy named Don Pedigo. Is that his
Don
name?
Pedigo.
Okay, let's see what Don had to say. All men this week.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, I do feel supported in my career. I would say most of the support comes right in my home from my wife. I can tell without her saying anything if my newest song stinks or just the subtleties, and I appreciate that kind of honesty. And I also get that from my publishers, whom I've been with now for 15 or 16 years. I sometimes wonder if it's considered part of their job to call and make sure I'm built up. But aside from any ego, it's great to have the trusting support from those that are close to us, at home and in the business, to keep us going and to keep us at our best. Because once that doubt seeps in, well, then you're not being very productive.
Again, he more about what I was thinking, more the emotional support.
I liked his
He brings
answer
up
though
an
a
interesting
lot.
point for me.
I liked his voice. Yeah, he has a good way. Whatever he said sounds good because he spoke nice.
He brings up an interesting point for me, which is family support. Because, I have to be honest. In my experience, I think family support is rare. You always hear about somebody that said, you know what? Somebody like your mom is like, you're not famous. This ain't going to work, or you hear, you really need to have something to fall back on. You really need to go get an accounting degree. You can try to be a rock star, but you really ought to have a college education that you can fall back on.
No, I just heard something kind of similar I was listening to Howard Stern today, and George Clooney was on, right? And the reason why he got in the show business is because his aunt was Rosemary Clooney.
Yeah.
And his cousin was this guy, Miguel Ferraro, who was an actor.
Mm-hmm.
So, George Clooney was just a guy like hanging out in Kentucky doing nothing. And
I wonder if he was watching Earl Gregory as well.
Maybe.
I'm sure
might have been.
Yeah, Rosemary and Earl used to hang out.
Hey, because like a few years older, he goes, George, why don't you come out to LA, spend a couple of weeks, and maybe try acting? And he goes, that sounds like fun. How can I do that? So he tells his dad he's going to Hollywood to try acting. He goes, George, come on. A million guys go there every week. What the odds on you getting anywhere is like minuscule. It's stupid. You're wasting your time. His father told him he's wasting his time. And then obviously he goes and like becomes George Clooney, which is like he's at the pinnacle of the stardom and stuff. But
parents get a bad rap because parents are coming from a place of love, and they just don't want to be happy. They don't want to see the heartache. They don't want to see you going through, that period where you're, living on peanut butter and trying to make the rent and blah, blah, blah.
Let's wrap it up and get out of this.
All right, everyone. But to wrap this up, for everyone who has made it through this episode, you can go to our website for the links to everything that we've talked about in this episode. The website is 94twenty.com. That is the numbers 94 and the letters TWENTY. And we will have YEARLOVE.
Leave a comment, man. If you like our podcast, comment.
And subscribe.
Let us know. And subscribe, participate. What are you guys doing out there?
Yeah, we're currently having conversations all week long about something called podcast analytics, and there'll be rants coming in the future episodes.
Also, look for our anybody out there with music and stuff or music supervisors. Look for our. Our room on Clubhouse?
Our room on Clubhouse. I will include
a Clubhouse room.
That link. We will be going live every week at some point.
A Clubhouse room.
All right, everyone.
More babbling.
Give YEARLOVE. Here is YEARLOVE with Thinking of You, and we will talk to y'all next time.
Goodbye.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
I keep on thinking of you, and it keeps me up all night and steals my sleep. I'm doing all I can do to keep you out of my mind, but it's no use. And it takes all the pain away until the sunrise, And I keep on dreading the day until I see your eyes, I see your eyes. Thinking of you till like being drunk, all of the feeling, but it's never enough. Convincing myself that I'm in love, only to regret it when I wake up. I keep on trying to stay on the path that I know, to build the life I know I need. But it's hard to see the point of it all, remembering that you're not here with me. And it takes all the pain away until the sunrise, till the sunrise. And I keep on dreading the day until I see your eyes, I see your eyes. Thinking of you till like being drunk, all of the feeling, but it's never enough. Convincing myself that I'm in love, only to regret it when I wake up. Thinking of you till like being drunk, all of the feeling, but it's never enough. Convincing myself that I'm in love, only to regret it when I wake up. And I wish I could find a way to get back all of the time that I wasted on over and up on you.